Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And I'm going to probably have to hold and kind of stop uploading these prediction tier lists because apparently they're not done yet with updates to 9.1. It just seems more and more and more keeps coming. And I mean, that's a good thing. I'm not upset about likely having to redo that last melee DPS tier list moving forward because that means that they're likely continuing to listen to feedback and iterating and still improving stuff, which is great to see. And in this recent update, we've got a lot of damage buffs to specializations. So if you've playing these specializations or looking to pick them up, then they're looking a lot more competitive overall. And we've got some new honor talents, and we've got something you may want to avoid moving towards the end of it. And we've got PvP gearing changes, but not the ones that I think we wanted. And I'll get to that at the end of the video. But to just start it off right off the bat, Death Knights are getting some love. Unfortunately, not Unholy or Frost, only Blood. You're going to get a 6% damage buff to all of your spells and abilities. Now, in Mythic Plus, if it still remains to be the case where just avoiding being attacked as the tank is the best strategy, this will not help you compete with the Vengeance Demon Hunter at the highest of key levels, although I think that you could play every tank to at least to a very high degree, maybe not the the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, but in terms of the game itself, you can still play all of the tanks. But if people are really trying to be meta about it and they're only taking Demon Hunters, this probably isn't going to help you out too much. It'll help you out in terms of maybe your raid viability, if you can bring a little bit more DPS and even out the tank balance there. But Unholy and Frost were not addressed whatsoever in this recent build. However, Survival was. Survival Hunter is getting a 15% damage increase to Raptor Strike, Kill Command, Mongoose Bite, Flanking Strike. To me, this again is falling under the line of just buffing overall damage rather than only focusing on cooldowns, which is going to be really good for PvP, even though I think that these changes were likely addressed to Survival Hunter and PvE or as a whole potentially. These changes will help you do more damage. Now, I've been reading some feedback from main Survival Hunter players, having played it since its big revamp in Legion, and it seems to me that there's a lot of missing fluidity to the spec at the moment due to the fact that certain Azerite traits, I think Wilderness Survival, which was removed, which helped reduce the cooldown of your wildfire bomb to get you more wildfires, which just made the spec feel really good, is missing. And this is one of the major downsides of borrowed power in general, is that something can be introduced and it's really great, but then it's just completely dropped off moving forward to the next expansion. So for me, I would personally like to see stuff like that baked into the passives of the class baseline. If there's something from the borrowed power system that is just rock awesome, just totally amazing, why not just turn that into the spec as a baseline? Not to mention that was a passive and it had nothing to do with ability bloat, which I think is the main purpose of the borrowed power, is that they can introduce new stuff without it accumulating too much over time. Now, passives that really make the class fun, I don't know why those aren't incorporated into the spec just as a baseline to make them feel good, but you will enjoy some damage, although based on their feedback, it seems like the spec could be a little bit, it's not going to be as fluid as it was with the Azerite trait, Wilderness Survival, I think is what it's called. So you'll look forward to some damage buffs. So Survival Hunters, hey, you were at least included. You're at least included in this one, right? It's going to help you out a bit. Now we are going to move forward, looking to priests. We're going to see the Clear Mind conduit here, nerfed by 25%. This is the Purge mana reduction one. I think it was a bit oppressive with how low mana cost Purge was ultimately with this conduit, so I'm not surprised to see this nerfed. And this is purely PvP change, I would imagine, as using Purge or spamming Purge in PvE is generally not the move, not the case. So this is going to try and help out with spam Purge coming out from priests. And Shadow specifically is receiving a lot of damage redistribution. We're going to see its Shadow Word Pain increase by 25%. We're going to see its Vampiric Touch increase by 25%, but its Devouring Plague damage is going to be going down 18%. This will help with your multi-target damage. This will lower your single target damage. This also lower your survivability, I would imagine, as Devouring Plague. I would think maybe not. Maybe Vampiric Touch does apply enough healing and support that Devouring Plague nerf is about evened out. So your multi-target's going to be doing really awesome, I would imagine, after this. So if you're a Shadow Priest in PvP who liked playing with Warlocks, which are receiving some buffs as well to their dots, you're going to enjoy these changes. If you're a Shadow Priest who plays with mages or focuses on single target, this is going to be a bit of a nerf for you, but not by much. So it's a little bit of an interesting take on Shadow, just trying to focus out to be more of a multi-target spec rather than a single target spec. And we're seeing some legendaries nerfed, with Shadow Flame Prism being reduced by 16% in terms of damage, so the Shadow Fiend punching things. And then Talbadar's Stratagem, Mind Blast damage increase has been reduced by 8%. So some slight nerfs to your legendaries, again targeting PvE, as in most cases in PvP you weren't running these. And in most cases, everyone's running the Power Infusion legendary to give it to their fire mages, so it's probably not the biggest deal. But actually, I was surprised that they nerfed other legendaries, since that Power Infusion one seemed almost mandatory to be a Power Infusion babysitter for other classes. Warlock, I think this was already included in a past change I went over, but Dark Pack's talent is now going to be absorbing 100% more damage. Your Corruption is doing 15% more damage. Your Seed of Corruption is going to be doing more damage. And your Dark Collar, which is just a talent that makes your Dark Glare last longer, is now baseline. And Shadow's Embrace is no longer a talent learned at level 58. It's now a talent at level 45, rose to some rearrangements. And there's a new conduit called Withering Bolt. Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul deals 33% more damage per time per damage over time effect active on your target. So trying to make Shadow Bolt a little bit more juicy overall if you've maintained a lot of dots and you've dark glared them for a longer duration. In PvP, you like never press Shadow Bolt, so it's not going to really be too big of a deal in PvP. Nice buff overall in PvE, although I feel like Affliction wasn't doing that horribly in PvE. Now Arms Warrior is getting a buff, and this is almost 100% attributed to non-PvP situations. As you can see, it even says now Mortal Strike damage increased by 10% in non-PvP situations. I think the first time I went over this, it was included in all situations. Same thing with their Deep Wounds, not PvP, but they were okay with Overpower doing 10% more damage in all cases. So in PvP, you'll be also getting an Overpower buff. Execute damage, but only if you're not Venthyr, is getting increased by 10%. Kind of makes sense. Condemn is doing a large chunk of your damage overall if you're running a Venthyr Warrior. So as an Arms Warrior in PvE, you're pretty delighted to see these buffs, as you are kind of underperforming overall. And then in PvP, you are still getting a slight tweak to having your Overpower deal a little bit more damage. Now scrolling through to the bottom, there's a lot of changes that I've already gone over here, and a lot of them that are new. So if we're looking at this, these Demon Hunter ones are not new, but this is for Ret Paladins. Luminescence PvP talent has been redesigned. When healed by an ally, allies within your aura gain 5% increased damage and healing for 5 seconds. So as a Ret Paladin, if your teammates heal you, you're going to give 5% damage to everybody in your group pretty much. That's pretty nutty. So a little bit of a buff in my mind here, although you lose out on some passive healing, which was attributing to quite a big chunk. And this is likely more of an RBG change, I would imagine, for Paladin than anything else. And then we finally get down to Holy Paladin, which is where the big changes came in. And Holy Light is just flat out getting increased by 20% in PvP. I think for a lot of people playing Holy Paladin currently, you're feeling weak. Not necessarily weak. You're feeling worse than you did at the start of the expansion because you were God mode at the start of the expansion. But a lot of matches in PvP at the moment generally go into dampening. And then once you're in dampening, the main condition to win the game is, do I run out of mana compared to my opponent? And Paladins run out of mana. And when they run out of mana, they really become incapable of using any further spells. Whereas there's a lot of other healers that when they hit mana, rock bottom on mana, they're still able to get enough to, get out a Riptide or get out a Smite or get out something that can keep the game going a little bit longer. Whereas Holy Paladin doesn't get that, with their mana regeneration being nerfed, but other healers not. So you get in this position where if games are going into dampening as a Holy Paladin, you're not favored. Unless it's Paladin versus Paladin for some reason. But this change will prioritize your Holy Light a little bit more. We're going to see Darkest Before Dawn PvP talent getting buffed. So now the healing increase per stack is 20%, stacking up to 5% rather than 10% up to 10. So it stacks faster, basically. And this could help you out if you're a Necrolord Paladin and you're actually using Light of the Dawn, if you wanted to try and do a Light of the Dawn build. But I kind of doubt that, at least in PvP, that's going to be a thing, and this is a PvP talent change. Divine Favor is getting nerfed by 50%, so now the bonus healing on your next Holy Light is only going to be 50%, likely making it, but your Holy Lights period are 20% higher, so this makes it more often that you're going to be casting, and then if you're casting, you can be outplayed more, rather than just only trying to stick to instant cast spells. Although those instant cast spells aren't being nerfed, so you still could probably fish around with Divine Toll and Light of the Martyr. And with that Divine Toll legendary, allowing you to cast Divine Toll every 10 seconds after you've cast it the first time, it's going to allow you a lot of recovery in terms of burst healing. Not only is that legendary for Ret Paladin, but for Holy. So I'm not sure if these changes are going to do what they're intending to do for Holy, but also your Light's Grace PvP talent is just going to be flat 15% at all times. It's no longer going to stack. So this is going to be a bit of a buff, except that its healing bonus is now only increased by 15%, not 50. So you get the damage reduction portion immediately off of one Holy Light, rather than going for 3. But the Holy Light healing is also lower, but you're also getting buff baseline on all of your Holy Lights. So it's tough to say if this will really attribute to much. I think in most cases, after all these Paladin changes, you're just going to end up in a similar spot. And with my expectation in terms of the meta and PvP, you're going to have a tough time competing with mana. I think Mistweaver potentially stepping up. It has decent mana regeneration. Resto Druid has better mana regeneration. Resto Shaman does. Paladin may struggle as being kind of a limited healer in terms of mana. And I'm almost wondering if they're going to look at other healers and address their mana retention overall. Other than that, I think that was it for most of the changes of significance coming in 9.1. So I'm very excited that they're still addressing stuff. They're looking at classes. Hopefully they just keep doing this, right? And this isn't the last one. And then other than that, we got a PvP gear update. And the PvP gear update wasn't something that I was expecting, and I'm not sure if what their intentions were with it or if it even solves it. So basically, if you've geared a character in Shadowlands, you know the drill, right? You do, let's say, some rated battlegrounds, because you can generally get into rated battlegrounds with lower item level and still have some success because there's just so many players on the team. It's much easier to gear from a lower starting point in RBGs than it is arena, because there's less people to help you out if your gear is bad. And you can also win a game regardless of your gear by capturing objectives or being a base defender or something of the like. So a lot of players, at least even myself, when I'm gearing an alt, I'll do rated battlegrounds and get my initial rating there, and then maybe cap my conquest somewhere else and use that rating that I've achieved in rated battlegrounds as the holder to get my 1800 gear, get my 2100 gear, get my 2400 gear. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. You're going to be able to just sit on the rating of the bracket that you're in. Basically, they've made it now so that the following week, to be able to retain that reward, you will have to win a match in that bracket. You'll have to win one match within that bracket to be able to qualify for the upgrades for the rest of your gear. So I think that what this is trying to do is trying to keep the ladder active, so that if you're somebody who just gets 1800 or 2100 or something in a bracket, and maybe you went into the LFG finder and you just gold boosted your character, you didn't really want to try to figure out PvP, and then you just sat that, capped your conquest somewhere else all the time and never participated in the bracket, you won't be able to do that. So you'll either need to fork out gold to the people that you were getting the boosts from every week, which is going to cost you a lot, or you're going to have to actually dedicate yourself to that bracket and build a consistent team and play in that bracket consistently if you want to continue to get those upgrades from that specific bracket, which makes a lot of sense. But to me, what I was more worried about was having some sort of catch-up mechanics, because who knows how long this patch is going to be. 9.0.5 and 9.0 has already been one of the longest patches. I'd have to go research it to see if it's the longest one, but I feel like it's getting pretty close. And with trying to catch up in alt, it's just a nightmare. And if this change was iterated now, it would be even more annoying later into the season. I do think that this is trying to, again, just keep the bracket alive, keep people coming back into the bracket that they're in to queue in that bracket, without being able to upgrade their gear from elsewhere and just safely camp that rating. It creates a little bit more of a stress, and it makes sure that you're still sharp and qualified at your bracket that you're in, or you're still forking out gold to the people that are boosting you on a consistent basis. So it almost, I mean, if you're a booster, you're going to really like this, because it means people are going to continually come back to you every week for that one win. But if you're not a booster, it's not going to address any sort of catch-up mechanic. It does force you to be as good as possible as you possibly can be at whatever bracket, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it's just that the gear disparity usually it generally has a big impact. Maybe it'll have less of an impact with PvP item level scaling that's coming in. That will make PvP gear more competitive with the PvE gear, because one of the main problems is Mythic Raider or a high Mythic Keystone player comes into PvP and they're starting at 1400, but their item level is 227 from Mythic Plus, and you're starting out at 1300 and you're maybe 200 item level, 210 item level, something like that, and that's a big gap. It's tough to outplay that gap unless other people on your team are of equal gear to those other people. But if you've just found a bunch of people and you're gearing at the bracket you're supposed to be gearing in, but it's been contaminated by the other parts of the game gearing systems coming in, and those people not being able to push up rating, and your ability to climb as like a kind of a legitimate team, or organized for that rating is infinitely harder, and it just progressively pushes people away from forming groups and learning how to play together into just buying a boost for the rating, and then trying to get the gear, then find a team after that point, which is just a big barrier to entry in my mind. So I'm not sure that this solves it. It definitely puts more stress on players who wouldn't be able to sit their rating on whatever bracket was in to be able to just keep farming up their gear set. So it encourages those brackets to stay more alive. Or on the other hand, you could say it's going to encourage the boosting scene more, which I'm not sure is a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm hoping that we see more in terms of it. But I kind of feel like we're not after the interviews that have been going on with Ian. So I'm a bit worried. But regards to that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave it with a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Just lets you know when my videos go live, so you can stay up to date, in the know, in the now with everything Shadowlands. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one.